morning, everybody. AM 1230 WJOB. Turn her producer mic on. There you go. 8:06 in the Calumet region. I'm Jim Diedlow, host of JED in the region. We're going to move into a new phase here on the morning show in the last couple of weeks of the internships of Drake Hoffler, Jeannie Diedlow, and Shannon Whalen, as I'm going to be handing over the airwaves. I'll be with them, on with them a little bit here and there, and then I'll kind of hand it off to them, and then they'll actually be getting graded on some of the stuff that they're doing. So Ryan Walsh and I will be kind of hanging over here and supporting them. Drake Hoffler, you excited about this?
Yeah, it's a learning experience. We'll see how it goes.
What have you learned so far here at WJOB over the summer? Number one or two things that come to mind when I ask you that.
Minus the bad habits, or
minus the bad habits. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've met a lot of people who are significantly like iconic people in the region, the mayors, the lawyers, the superintendents, and it's cool. Like I never was really that like into news, but since I started working here, I've become more cultured. I know exactly, like, I'm more familiar with the region and I know what's going on, and I mean, I'm very grateful for that. I can hold conversations with my parents, with adults, like around stuff that's going around here and not just sports. So I'm trying to not be as one-dimensional as everyone thinks I am, but you know, like I said, it's a learning experience, and I mean, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I can't thank you guys enough for this, and yeah, I mean.
So you've learned a little bit more about current events and about your Calumet region.
Yeah.
Do you find it boring?
I wouldn't say boring. I mean, we're obviously not a huge city like Chicago, New York, where you obviously have things going on every day. I mean, there's always something going on, but obviously not huge, like, significant stories. But I mean, we do cover the majority of major events, and I mean, like the death of the Gary cop, that was obviously a big event, not just region-wise, but nationwide. And, you know, like, that was one of our events that we covered for quite some time, and I thought that was pretty cool that we kept everyone informed, and we're pretty much one of the news stations that were up to date on that.
Drake Hoffler is going to be a senior at Indiana University. Jeannie's going to be a senior at University of Wisconsin. Jeannie, you've been hanging around radio since you're 14. You keep coming back for more. You keep answering the bell. Why is that?
Well, I don't know if that's exactly true. This summer I came back more for the behind-the-scenes stuff, the administrative stuff. And I think I've learned a lot working with Debbie and working with you and kind of getting an idea of really how a business runs.
Now, a lot of people are going to recognize your voice. You were on with Jordan Beasley. You've done shows. You've been reading the news here since you were 14 years old. Now you're learning more about the business end of it and, quite frankly, about the regulatory end of it. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that. You're learning more about how much regulatory stuff goes into running a federally regulated business. You think that'll ever help you going forward?
I think coming into it, I've realized, obviously, that WJOB, was federally regulated, but I didn't realize how much bureaucratic steps you had to go through in order to keep, your radio station in line with all these different federal regulations. So I think the big takeaway here that I've learned is kind of just make sure not to skip those little steps, no matter how insignificant they may seem. You kind of got to keep up with it and make sure the business is within those regulations.
It may sound a little bit odd to some folks, but, I agree with what Jeannie had to say, that unless you get into a federally regulated business like the FCC regulated, you really don't know how deep it goes. And Jeannie has done an amazing job in just kind of reviewing all of those little steps. You wouldn't think that someone would come into a radio station and get that involved in regulatory matters, but I honestly think that for the long-term health of us, and hopefully the thing goes on for many years and generations. Hopefully, someone has to have a full knowledge of all of those things, and it just happens to be landing on your shoulders. How's that feel about it?
I mean, it wasn't easy. It definitely took a lot of time for me to get familiar with all the regulations and learn where our files were and where everything was, and it took some time and it took a lot of research, but, I think I have a lot better grasp of what's going on around here.
When people tell me, well, what should I go into? And, I like accounting, I like law. And I learned this when I was up at the Board of Trade. One of the more stable jobs that you can get is to be a compliance person in whatever field that you're in, whether it's a compliance with FCC or SCC or FDA. I mean, there's a whole. It's not the first thing that people think of when they go to college. Okay, I'm not pushing you to be a compliance officer or go to work at a regulatory agency, but because of the complexity of our normal American lives, people that have private businesses have to have people on staff that do that. And they have an incredibly important position. Up in the trading firms where I used to work, the compliance officers were partners most of the time. And all they're really doing is making sure that those guys aren't doing illegal trades and that they're reporting everything correctly over and over, every day, every week, every month, yearly reports, biannual reports. All that stuff is very complicated. Anyways, let's move on to Shannon Whalen. Shannon, you started out a little bit nervous. Are you still nervous?
Not at all.
Why is that? What happened?
I just got more practice in and became more comfortable with what I'm doing and the people I'm working with and being around all these equipments and that kind of thing, and more comfortable.
And you can feel it. And I think Verley mentioned that in your voice, that you have just you've brought some confidence to the whole thing. Here's what's going to happen, guys. I'm going to walk out right now. I'm going to hand it to these guys. I really wish that you would call in and whatever topics they're talking about, if you guys would just participate. Remember, once again, WJOB is making a migration. Most of what we do is local radio and local news and information, and that will always be the most important thing that we do. It has been for 90 years. We're moving into a little bit different phase, and starting on, I think, August 23rd, Purdue Cal is going to be supporting, teaching a class in here, and we are going to try to get more local students involved in the high-tech entrepreneurial end of what we do, and also in the broadcasting end of what we do. We take pride in the many people that have come through here and have already gotten real good jobs, but you know what? It takes a community. It takes all of us to come together to help educate and give these kids confidence to go on and do things in the world. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeannie Didlo. She's going to kind of drive it. Shannon Wayne.